What's up, YouTube? So this is a recap from earlier today. If you haven't watched that first video, you can go ahead, click back and watch that. It was my first live stream on YouTube. Please take it a bit lightly as it was my first video that I've recorded in a long time, and it wasn't as good. It wasn't as smooth. Keep in mind, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I had woken up at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Haven't had my coffee yet. Haven't had anything. Then the charts were just going crazy at the time, so my head was just like, I don't know. And then for me to just go from that to like my first live stream, being on camera, I don't know. It was just it was off. It was off. It was a bad video, but it is what it is. We ended up taking a trade. Um, Ended up winning that trade. I kind of just want to recap on it. Like I said, we did take that trade live. I didn't stay the full trade, um, like I would want to, but at the end of the day, I still took the entry. I still took recorded myself throughout the whole entire live, and it was again in the previous video I had mentioned that I'm doing this more to kind of like document everything that I'm doing and kind of see my mistakes, see the flaws, see the good, and that video was definitely what I'm doing now is definitely needed because as I watched that video back, there's a lot of flaws that I had, not just like as me talking or as me just kind of going through the video, but just like mainly my day trading. Um, Me breaking down the whole entire setup was very sporadic, very chaotic. I feel like I kept going back and forth, back and forth. I felt like I was kept jumping back to one time frame, going back to the other, then going back to that same one because I forgot to say something. And it's very, very I wasn't as smooth. And that's kind of why I feel like I've also been inconsistent with day trading because I mean just watching me breaking down my analysis can kind of tell like kind of how I'm actually trading. You know, if my analysis and me kind of breaking down the trade is chaotic, then obviously let me actually if it's chaotic, then obviously it's going to be again chaotic. My results are going to be chaotic. I'm not going to be as smooth as I would like to be. So like I said, definitely did that first video definitely did open my eyes into kind of seeing what I need to improve on. Um, just overall everything about my whole analysis, down to my analysis, down to my entry. My entry was also sloppy. We could have a way better entry. The only thing that I'm actually proud of throughout that whole trade, and I'll get into it in a little bit, was actually my exit. The exit was actually spot on. Kind of my reasoning for my exit as well, not just kind of exiting, but my reasoning as for why I'm looking to get out was also spot on. Um, so yeah, so this whole journey, me documenting, is very needed. Like I said, just watching that first video really opened my eyes as to things I need to improve on. Also things that I can kind of take with me as kind of like the good things. There's a lot of good things that I did. Obviously, I mean it was a winning trade, so there was a lot of good things that I could take on, and those are the things that I need to lean on throughout this whole entire journey, throughout this whole entire process, because those are the things that again are winning trades. If we come back, let's look at this real quick. My dashboard. This is for the month, as you guys can see. Like I said, it's very inconsistent, right? This is the whole reason why I even wanted to start doing this whole documenting myself and live trading and just kind of being more consistent with myself. Because again, as you can see, back in we're obviously in April, the second week, I took about 4 trades. The last one was a winning trade. This was a really good trade. But like I said, after that, I didn't trade on Friday, and that was simply just because, like I said, I had work and just a lot of things going on. Inconsistent. This day was inconsistent as well. So 2 inconsistent days, and then I kind of come back based off Sunday trying to trade, which didn't obviously work out, and that's just a Sunday. Again, don't even trade Monday. And again, these aren't even reasons as to like, okay, I don't see a trade, I'm not seeing an entry. It was I simply just did not get on the charts, simply was not trading. Because if not, then I'll write down, you know, what I mean, didn't see an opportunity. But like I said, there's many pairs, pairs. I do trade 2 pairs. I trade US 30 and GU. So like I said, with those two, I can find at least one, even if it's a simple little entry. I still want to get, even if it's a 5 pip, 10 pip. Like there's always at least a scalp. You know what I mean? There's always at least a scalp. But that's just, it's just how good your skill is, right? How good you're able to identify that scalp or the intraday type trade. So at the end of the day, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Is kind of just inconsistent. Then I come back Tuesday, lose this, like whatever. I don't even think this was a real trade. I think this was me being impulsive. I wasn't even trading the day before, so I just wanted to make some money. That right, and then I don't even trade at all within Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Nothing. I come back right, and again, it's just inconsistent. Like this is something right here on this day, I can lean on this. But this thing, I traded this day, and I remember too. I traded this day. I got too busy, got too caught up with work and just everything else. Didn't even try to study or anything on Saturday. Then I come back on Sunday, and then me doing this already kind of kills the whole momentum. I should have even went back into this here, documenting this a lot more, and got into that more, which I didn't. And I think here I started. I On this day I went back to this trade and try to like reanalyze it a bit. But at that point, it's already been 2 days. I was already kind of overthinking all this stuff. It was just bad. Like this is inconsistent work, really, really bad inconsistent work. That is just, it's just not needed. It just doesn't help me at all whatsoever. Um, so then again, don't even trade these next couple of days. Come back Sunday, don't trade Sunday. I tried trading Monday. I think this is a good trade. This is just, I think just I lost this trade. Um, this hit took 2 trades, 44. 40. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember too clearly, but I don't think, because again, for me to have like a solid stop loss is usually within like 100, 120, depending on but that's like the average trades that I take. So 44.86. I'm thinking it was just an impulse trade, and I just kind of got out based off just it wasn't kind of flowing right. But again, it's just really inconsistent. Um, and this is just $3. I think I just did it on accident or something. Um, and then again, so then after this day, I do remember after this day, I strictly said that I want to be more consistent, want to get on just obviously from this trade. I know what I'm doing. There's a lot of times where like I kind of take like mental trades. I know those aren't real trades, but mental trades, and they do play out based off like my entry, based off my analysis. And then days like this where I have 400, like this was a good trading day. Again, these are like I know what I'm doing, but again, I get so inconsistent that I don't lean on these days in which I should, because again, it's just my fault that I should just be way more consistent. And this is what this channel is for. It's kind of to keep me accountable, and just visually see me actually being consistent, me putting in the work. Um, so yeah, so then I told myself within these days here, I was just gonna study, um, study my course, and then based off Sunday, I was gonna get back into it and then start actually trading. And this is exactly what I did. So this was Monday. Monday was a day where I just was so busy, I caught up, and this wasn't even me just being lazy or me just again. This was just I was just too busy, had a lot of things to do. Did not trade this day. Came Tuesday, I just simply did not find a trade. I was actually waiting for this trade that's going to set up right now, just because this trade on Tuesday, um, which was based off US 30. I wasn't even looking at GU. I was looking just solely based off US 30. And like I said, let's go off the daily. So this was Monday and Tuesday. So this was still pushing up, as you can see. So this here alone, I was waiting for this trade essentially. I was waiting for this kind of pullback. I was waiting for all this essentially. As you can see, this is already pulling up. Oh, yeah, crazy move right here. But yeah, so again, this is just accountability. Like I said, I really need to start, especially after a day like this. Like this is one of my biggest days that I've had. I mean, ever. You know what I mean? This is the biggest trade I've ever had. This trade was simply, as you can see, this trade here in the beginning was super impulsive. I went over that in the first video. This was buy. This was even part of my analysis. Again, this was super just super impulsive of me, super dumb, super just immature. Just shouldn't have done this at all. This was an accident. Accidentally pressed a button. Luckily I made $1.80, but that was just an accident. So it was really just this trade here that I finally made 1,259. Again, the most I've ever made in a single day for hands down. Um, and especially it was within 2 hours. So I'm really, like I said, proud of that. I need to lean on this, on these, on everything that I basically, everything that went good, everything that I basically leaned on and essentially understood. I need to take that with me and just carry that on, because this year was, again, super, super solid trade. It wasn't even just holding it. Like I said, my entry, even my exit was just perfect. Um, so let's get in based on that trade, right? So as I said in the previous video, I was a lot more bearish based off, and you can even see in the previous video, I was kind of back and forth. I was kind of bearish, leaning on bullish. But overall, daily was just more bearish. Obviously, this is lower high, lower low. And essentially currently where this was at, starting off here, we were a bit more bullish based off this candle here, based off the daily, just kind of seeing this. And like I said, this was that higher low. Then we made a lower high though. Then we made like a low, right? We never really closed additional candle did not close underneath this line. As you can see, this is tested and it was a gap for one. But overall, this was still essentially maintaining like a bullish bias within a downtrend, right? So the counter trend was still holding up within this whole entire downtrend. So like I said, so then based off that, but like I said before, this here, I consider this to be a bearish variation. So this bearish variation right here is what I consider to be a bit more bearish based off the daily, because obviously I can see this based off of here. And this is still a move. Now this isn't essentially really based too much heavily off the weekly, but this obviously, like I said, based off the daily time frame, we're bearish, and now we have a bearish variation. So this kind of shows me that we're slowly starting to get back into this whole downtrend of the thing, right? Now, and this is something that I was kind of confused about, super, super confused about. It was kind of throwing me off a bit. Was just this little resistance here. I know it's so small and but that's why it was throwing me off, because here at the end of the day, I can see this resistance here. So anything above this is kind of like a higher high to a certain extent. And like I said, you can see this a lot better off the H4 time frame. So if we go down to the H4 time frame, this was this level of resistance, right? There's that wick. Yeah, that wick and that resistance. Okay, cool. So essentially it was all this, right? I'm actually just gonna delete this. So I can go. So essentially this was that level of resistance, right? This was that valid level of resistance. If we were to pull out our fibs, right? Point A, point E. Obviously this came back to our golden zone, hitting our golden zone pretty clear. But like I said, not only was this just a break of resistance, it was also correlated. I can see this resistance here, this here, based off the daily. So this is why I was just kind of confused, because I can see that that's a correlation. So even though this was a bit bearish, right, lower high, and then we kind of made like a little low, but obviously if we go down to the H4, we can analyze this a bit better. Lower high, we actually made a lower low. There's this entire move, and now we're just getting that retracement. Based off all that, that's why I was a bit confused. Just kind of, I know and understand that daily's off lower high, so I was still looking for more of a sell. But the minute this kind of formed, I was like, because if this hadn't formed, I personally would have been more open to holding a trade all the way down here to the support zone. But the fact that we broke this resistance here, I was more um, hesitant in actually holding a trade down here, and just more open to obviously holding a trade down here, which it, like I said, perfectly did down to its T, right? And I even went over this inside the previous video, that this was essentially the whole area as to where I would take the sell, because of just exactly where this level is at, right? This is obviously like that. If we break this down based off the H4, that golden zone there, this is essentially all this here is a push, right? And this is just that pullback. That's all that is. Push, pullback, higher low, higher high, So at this point, I'm just expecting a higher low, which in this moment, as we speak right now, is forming that higher low. This is why we're getting that big bullish push. So this is what I was expecting this entire time. But again, I was just, once again, it's just, I was really, really confused and I was just kind of thrown off. And I was just kind of, again, overthinking. I was kind of just like, what should I truly lean on at this moment in time? But I just, at this point in time, I just went solely off what I'm seeing based off the lower time frames and understand that if I do take a sell, it would solely be off a counting trend, like based off H4, we're in a higher low, higher high, it's an uptrend. So anything bearish is obviously a counter trend. So because of that, I'm just solely just understanding that, and I'm not marrying any trade. I'm not holding any trade. I'm not doing any long-term stuff. I'm just simply getting in and getting out, and that's it. I'm done. And that's exactly what I did. So to break down this entry happened right around here. Now this entry was a bit, not a bit, I would say it was very, very sloppy. Actually, we start off H1. Based off the H1, right? So based off the H1 time frame, I had this time frame kind of as my main structure for kind of my lower time frame, to kind of really decide where I want to go. And as you can see here, this is this higher low point here, like a higher high again. Analyzing, this is my main time frame, so this is where I would want to see my main resistance broken, my main lower high points, all this stuff. This is why I have mainly my higher lows, higher highs, higher low, and it's a bit sloppy, right? You might be asking yourself, this might not be a higher high, but analyzing the whole structure as to kind of the moves itself was more based off the M15. But I just wanted to get an overall overview, kind of like my overall trend bias in a sense on the H1. So this is why on H1 it may be a little bit sloppy, but again, I'm just simply marking off my higher lows, higher highs, seeing what's actually valid, what's a true level of resistance, what's a true higher low point, what's actually breaking, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So based off this H1 time frame, I'm simply obviously have this higher low, higher high, higher low. Then we break this level of support right around here. This is where we break the support. And from here we have a lower high, lower low, right? So keep in mind that this is a counter trend as well. Like we're still with this higher low, higher high, but the fact that on H1 this broke a level of support kind of shows me that on H1 we're slowly starting to transition, and because we're slowly starting to transition off H1, that gives us a opportunity to potentially make a lower high point and essentially start this H4 counter trend. You see what I mean? Right here. And the fact that this was already kind of formed a level of support, right? We wanted support for sure. You just kind of get that break, because here it's just retracing at this point in time. But understand this is a higher high. We still want to see some type of support being made before we actually get in, because that would be a true lower high point, right? If not, if you get on these lower high points here, these are just lower time frame, lower high points. We want to get an H4 potential lower high point, in which we did, right? So breaking this down by the H1 again. Lower high, lower low, it retraces now, right? So now at this point in time, it's a bit more. I understand that based off the H1, if we do break this resistance, it's not necessarily too major. But it is something for me to like keep in mind. But at the end of the day, this is just because this is not seen. So if we go to H1, H4, that resistance wasn't seen at all to begin with, not a single bit. So because of that, I understood that this here is something that I can actually like not depend on too much in a sense. Not only that, but it's also how it formed, right? So if you were to mark off this level of resistance here, right? Bullish, bearish, bullish, bearish. Yeah. As you can see, we have these two candles, right? These two candles was potentially kind of breaking this, has a potential of just breaking the level of resistance on lower time frame. So this is where we needed to see and confirm all this, right? So from here, from H1 to M15 is where I jump down, right? And this is that level here. As you can see, based off, if you can kind of even just fixing this level here. This is that variation 1, 2. We don't break any resistance, right? We don't do any of that. This resistance here is being maintained, tested, right? Tested. So all these levels still being tested. So technically that like variation isn't really valid for the fact that we don't really have a solid. If we had a solid break of resistance, a nice bullish candle, right? Seeing that stuff, then I would be a little bit more hesitant and maybe just a lot more patient and kind of waiting for what I need to see. But again, it's not correlated at all. Again, this resistance wasn't being broken, any of this. So based off the M15, right? This was still being tested. We don't have a true higher high, right? And not only that, but based off just overall structure, like I said, H1, we see this lower high, lower low, but it's all better analyzed based off here. So we know, understand that this here is simply just noise, right? This is just noise here. Boom, 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 right? All this is just simply noise. And we're still, based off this M15, but I'm still looking for at least a break of support to at least get in based off this lower high, lower low to kind of continue, obviously, this downtrend, to continue this lower high, lower low. So then at this point in time, right here I was kind of looking at this point here as a potential, but then I kind of didn't based off the fact that if we were to fib this, this is that first 38.2. So this here, it coming down here and kind of engulfing all this variation, this here wasn't really valid for the fact that this was just a 23.6 retracement. So the fact that this was a 38.2, I know for this trend, we have now a valid higher low point to be able to push it up. And this is why we still end up pushing up a tad bit more. But even here, I'm just being patient. I'm waiting for my breaks of, all I need to see is a break of support, right? Because at the end of the day, this is more bearish, lower high, lower low. So all I needed to see at this point in time was just a break of support. Once we got that like possible break of support, even in engulfing, like how I'm about to get to right now, that's all we needed. My entry was a bit late just because I didn't see that at the time as I was analyzing. But simply here, it's just obviously this was kind of like that higher high. This is all like lower time frame, but to a certain extent, we have this big kind of higher high here. Then we have like another variation pullback, right up here, and then we have a higher low point, but then we don't get that next. Like here, we're kind of higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. But now we get a lower high, and this is all not even just a lower high point, but it's a lower high point that came down and closed underneath this level of support. So the minute this closed underneath here, we should have went on lower time frames like the M5, M1, down to M5. This would have been that here. Did we actually mark this off? Hold on. So that level there would have been here. So we still have the support here, right? So yeah, so that support level there, based off just that time frame itself, we could have simply entered just based off this candle right here. Understanding that this here was a tested level and this was then that low point. So yeah, this here was this, but we didn't get an entry until this candle. We basically entered this candle here, and this candle was already kind of towards a little bit of the bottom. Like I think we entered like somewhere right here. So this was already way late. I could have had a way better. I mean, we're talking about damn near 50 pips, or actually this would have been that. I mean, 41 pips. I mean, 41 pips, especially on US 30, is major. So this is where essentially again, but what I was looking at based off the previous video, I wanted to see a break off here, when in reality, when this kind of pushed up and this was kind of pulling down, yes, this was the break that we needed to see. But the minute we made support here, that based off M15 that we can see, all we needed was a break of support, which this is where we got that break of support. Once again, once that candle formed, we would have waited and we could have got an entry either here based off the M1 or just waited for this M5 to kind of close and then basically just entered off the closure off that. So that was basically the trade. Yes, and then exit was spot on. This was that dollar trade that I did on accident. Exit. I literally exited right off this M5 engulfing. So once this bullish candle closed, I exited out my trade. And from there on out, it literally pushed all the way back up. Here, I was very hesitant in doing that. I was kind of willing because I think around here was that I was playing around with like $400 at this point in time. But at the end of the day, just how it kind of retraced, we didn't get an engulfing. So I was kind of still okay with the fact that this is still like not engulfed. And then we formed the lower high point. And then even here, I was kind of like a bit like thinking about closing out the trade. But simply this was literally at 6:30 open and wide open. So I knew that we would get a big push. And next thing you know, we got a big push to the downside. So yeah, so then let's go. That was simply based off all this time frame. Like I said, I feel like at the end of the day, entries could have been way smoother. Finding this trade, understanding that based off M15, that's all I needed to really understand is based off M15, all I needed was a breakup support. Because I was honestly going to wait for at least a little bit more of a pullback, but I would have missed out. There was no real pullback. And I was actually going to enter based off it closing underneath here and then kind of getting in on a pullback or whatever the case may be. But we never really got that pullback. So this is why I was just hesitant. I was like, maybe I'm being too impulsive. Maybe I should be more patient. This is where obviously it played out. But just again, understanding that based off M15, this is real. All this is noise. We don't see any of these breaks of resistance, right? So to a certain extent on M5 or even, I mean, just based off this time frame, M15, again, all we needed was a breakup. This was a potential breakup support, right? We have this closure, but underneath here. But again, this was a 38.2. So the next time we even got something like this was here. I mean, we kind of got this, but this was that wick that threw me off. This is when I was about to record, and I was just like, man, I don't know what to think about this. This threw me off. I'm like, am I bullish? And this is when we took that impulsive trade just because this long wick, like this thing, it threw me off. It threw me off heavy, and this was just. But again, I should have just stuck to my bias. I don't know why I changed it just for an impulsive little, but like it was just dumb, super dumb, super immature of me. But yeah, no more. So yeah, so basically just based off M15, all we needed was just again make sure we get a nice break of support, which could have been this because at the end of the day, this here on lower time frame, the M5, M1, this is like a higher high, right? So this would be like a higher low, right? And then we can see on M15 like an engulfing, right? This is that engulfing. And then we pull back, getting another higher low, and we can see that on this time frame. So that's all we need. It's just a break of support that we can that can be correlated on the M15, which is right here. Boom. Right? Because based off, like I said, watch, all these breaks of resistance, higher lows, resistance, higher lows, all these stuff is not correlated except for one, right? Except for one, H1, which is this resistance here, which then we can see based off this time frame, right? Based off H1. But that's the thing, we never really actually broke above it. So because we didn't break above it, technically there was no real correlation based off the H1, and we could have still gone off M15 based off this and still look for that break. As long as we got the break that we needed based off here, right? Once we would have, if we would have made a higher high, a true higher high, right, based off this H1 2, like for example, if this here would have pushed a little bit more higher, and then based off M15, we would have got that like actual higher high point, then I would have said, okay, now we need to see a break of 100% because this push here is now correlated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? But we never got that. It's all just maintain, maintain, maintain. We slowly just maintain this exact level. And that's all we needed. That's all we really needed, which is a break of support. Um, so yeah, that was my rant. Long rant. But yeah, slowly just again, entries could have been way better. But again, I feel like I could have gone in knowing what I need to look at, right? Based off M15, I said that we needed to break this. I was looking at this, I was looking at that, I was drawing this trend line. Like again, I was just doing stuff, and as I was doing stuff, it kind of just came to me late. But it's something that we just need to pick up a lot quicker. Because again, then this entry could have been a lot better. Um, yeah, this is me I just got to really study this trade here, lean on this trade here, and just really study this. But if we go to, obviously shows here, right? I can actually resync just to make sure. All right, so boom, that trade, right, 1,259. And I took screenshots based off my phone. So this was that trade based off my phone, as you guys can see. So I actually went all the way to 1,367, right? But obviously I waited for that engulfing, so it pulled back just a tad bit. But like I said, we closed at that perfect timing. It was perfect. And like I said, exit. I'm not sure if I went over this, but exit was just mainly based off this H4 because I knew this was that 100%. So I knew based off point A to point, like this higher low point, boom, from here to here was that push move. So I knew this was 100%. So I knew if we didn't see exhaustion here or struggle here, we were going to still see it here because again, I was actually right, and the fact that this here on the daily it pulled back right here based off this resistance where it basically broke and made that higher low point. So I was actually right that we should have actually paid more attention or took in that break, right? Seeing that break a lot more serious. So yeah, so this was that trade. I entered off a 0.02 lots, and that 0.02 made me this amount, which is crazy. That's why I use 30. It's just crazy. But again, if you're in the wrong, you'll feel that for sure. And like I said, this is just basically off TradeLocker. As you guys can see, this is a live account. Like I said, there's the profits. So yeah, that's my trade. Now I'm just slowly trying to figure out exactly how to get kind of back into this. We were bullish, so essentially I kind of just maybe got a little bit of a piece of that pie. But essentially, as you guys can see right now, this is pushing up pretty heavily. So yeah, it's just making me wonder if I should have been a lot more steady, a lot more patient on the buy, understanding that like I saw based off H4, we did have that break. And just basically just sticking to that break and essentially just kind of that's a break. So I want to see a bit essentially a higher low and waiting for this higher low because if I would have waited for that, I would have been part of this move right here, which this is taking place. But nonetheless, like I said, we are approaching this resistance here. But like I said, it all really matters based off this weekly. Right off this weekly, we see this resistance here. It is Wednesday. So we do have 2 more trading days. So it's really important how we see this. Again, we can either get a nice big push up and continue to go up, and that was actually the main move, or you're just going to touch this level here, and then we'll be able to see some type of pullback down here. Yeah, so really finding a way to try to obviously not. I want to finish this week strong, so I really again this is my biggest trading day. I really want to finish strong. I'm also going to try to trade. Like I said, if this continues to push up, then I'm sure that I missed my move, or my entry. Now, if we can get another possible entry here, cool. But this is going to be really risky. So yeah, so basically just being patient. That's all it really is. Being patient. At the end of the day, on daily, I'm still bearish. So until if we can get a push up here, I mean, that'll change my bias a whole lot for sure. But like I said, it's the last 2 days, right? This weekly candle's getting to this resistance level. So it's about being patient, really patient, right? It's either going to push up and we kind of miss our move, or it might consolidate a bit more, or just head back down and continue this whole downtrend, right? I'm also going to be looking at GU, right? GU is another pair that I actually do really good on. I really understand the analysis, so hopefully based off GU, I can find an entry. Yeah, if not, then like I said, it's GU or maybe even gold, or just any of these pairs. Truly, like I said, if US30 isn't really doing its thing, I try to find at least another pair for me. Because again, there's at least a scalp, at least something for me to make money, right? It doesn't have to be a whole move, a big old move, just enough for me to make some money, for me to continue to grow and continue to learn. So yeah, so I'll be back again tomorrow morning with again kind of analysis of what I'm seeing and the potential trades I'm willing to take or I'm thinking about taking. But until then, peace.